Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am Jeremy of Brendle Concepts, and today is an episode that I've really been looking forward to doing because everything's going to start making sense for a lot of people, I think. The last episode, I finished up the round rod. I did the how-to. Not a bad process. You know, the car, as far as the internal structure is done, is complete. So now we're moving on to foam again, and I'm going to do another how-to, and you can see right in here and right down in here in these ports, this was what I was leading up to. So again, visually, you can see how this is making the body look so much more substantial. I'm going to do a video and show the inside, and you can see how parts are now becoming kind of enclosed. I can explain how the trim panel can go. We'll look at the ports themselves. We'll actually be doing, the process of installing the foam on the other side, just the same as I've been doing it, the same format. So I think at this point, let's get looking at the video. All right, so this is the inside of the wheel well here. You can see how I've added these pieces of foam. This lower one here and this upper one will now, create this port. The cool thing about doing it this way is, I had to put these pieces of structure in here to support everything, to make sure that, from side to side, I was the same on both sides of the car. But I actually made it a design element. So, that's one of the things that I like to do is kind of, incorporate form and function into one. If we go up, you can see this one moves all the way back in there. And then if we look all the way up here, you can see this gap way up here. So I have to add another piece of foam. I will do that at another time. These will have to be, again, soaked in resin just like everything else. I want to do these panels or these pieces on the car so that they kind of, solidify in place. So when I pop the panel off, it retains that shape. So that's pretty much this section. This is what I'll be installing on the other side of the car today. I don't know which piece we'll pick to do. We're just going to randomly pick one and go for it. So I'll show you the back side now. Okay, so we have the back of the wheel well here. And again, you can see how this upper piece of foam and this lower piece of foam creates the port. You got to kind of move on up in here. And there we have that gap up in the top again that I have to fill. This section here is a little different because our parking sensor is going to have to go in here, kind of in this section right here. So I'm going to have to make a trim panel that will go all the way up into here and down here. And that's going to be kind of, what protects everything from the elements. So again, designing all this was to create this cavity. That was the point in adding, another point in adding that round rod is now I can, completely seal this off. So that's pretty much, the inside. Let's look at the outside. There we have the outside here. You can see how this section runs under the door. When I first ran this round rod, I knew putting this section in there was going to really suck. You can see it's up in there. It really did suck, but I got it. So, once I put fiberglass over everything, this will look pretty seamless and clean. So here's the outside of the back port. I really kind of played with this one a little bit because this piece right here actually runs into the inside. So I kind of did like a, blade that runs from the inside all the way out that you actually see once the car is on the ground and done. So yeah, so let's move on to the templates. I'm going to talk about templates here and the materials, tools, and everything that I'm going to be using to put this foam in place. So first off, we'll start with the templates. I've already, made these templates for the other side of the car. And when we're talking symmetry, and again, I hate to bring it up, but it's a question that I get all the time, how to make stuff symmetrical. I like to save my templates from one side of the car to the other, or one side of truck, vehicle, whatever I'm building, to use to see how things are symmetrically. So we will just pick a random one and probably just start with this is the one that I started with originally and made first. So we'll probably just start there. But yeah, so this is what we were going to do. If you want to see how I make my templates of tape, you can go back to another episode called How to Make a Moldless Body Kit from Scratch. I kind of cover the foam that I use, the tape, making templates, all this stuff, but we'll just kind of go over it again. So now that I have these templates made up, we'll talk about the foam. The foam itself, it's the same foam that I've been using for the entire process so far. I highly recommend getting a really good pair of scissors to cut this stuff. The only reason being, if you use really kind of dull scissors, the fabric skin on this foam does not cut very well, and it leaves really rough edges, and it makes installing it a nightmare. So make sure you get a good pair of scissors and you'll be just fine. I like to use a fine tip marker to trace my templates. I've had people ask why I just do not cut around my templates. I don't want to damage my templates, and on top of that, the tape does not really stick very well to this foam, so as you're trying to cut it, it wants to pull away and it doesn't make a very accurate cut. So, I understand you can do that, but I do not. So moving on, some sandpaper here. We're just going to use this to scuff up our panels and our round rod everywhere that we're going to join it. We're going to clean it, with either acetone or rubbing alcohol. I'm going to use acetone. I got my little straight edge rule here. I just use this to take measurements from side to side. Also, I can use this to kind of put on the foam and make sure that it's laying flat. So that pretty much covers, what we're going to be using. Next thing I'm going to do is just grab this template right here, and then we're going to go look at it and see how it lines up on the car. Yeah, let's go do that now. The piece of foam that we're going to be making is this bottom section of the port here in the rear. This is where I started on the other side. So we're just going to start, I like to do things in order from side to side. I don't know. It's a mental thing for me. You guys do it however you want, skip around, whatever. But yeah, so we'll just see how this template fits in comparison. So again, when I do this stuff, I'm trying to show the good, the bad, and, everything in between. I don't expect this thing to be 100% perfect, but I do expect it to be really close. So we'll just see how it lays in. So now I have it in. It's laying really, really close to the other side. When I make my templates, I usually make them a little bit proud on this outer edge here where the round rod is, so that I can trim, kind of fine tune the foam. The only section that is really not the same is back in here around this winglet. And that really is just kind of variation in how I laid the fiberglass. So again, this stuff is all going to get, messed with. I'm going to put more foam in here to blend out this winglet and make this all look like one piece. So again, this is just a point that no one's ever going to see. So, when you're talking about symmetry, again, keep in mind what is actually going to be seen, what's not going to be seen, and just do your best. And in the end, I'm sure it'll, come out just fine. So I'm going to want to transfer my template here to my foam. Um, all these templates have basically a really nice straight edge here because they're lining up to that round rod. So I don't have a good clean edge on my foam. This one here is not too bad. I could probably make it work. But I will show you what I do. I just grab a rule and I'm just going to trace a line that I can cut. Now this foam, I will say this, because of that fabric on top, you have to go very lightly across it. Otherwise, the tip of the marker wants to get caught in the fabric. So if you push too hard with your rule or you push too hard with your marker, it wants to get stuck. So just kind of go lightly and you'll be just fine. Otherwise, you're kind of going to be cursing when you first figure, or until you figure it out. So I'm just going to cut this line. I'm not going to record it because who really needs to see me cut? But I'm going to cut this line and then we will transfer the template. So I have a nice clean edge here now that I can, line my template up with. Now my templates, normally when I make them, I use the adhesive side against the round rod, which is nice because the template will then, transfer directly with the adhesive side to the foam. This template in particular, I had to do upside down or from the bottom of the car, meaning that the sticky side is up. So little trick, we're just going to put a little donut on the back just to hold the foam in place. Nothing crazy spectacular here, but we just want it to stay still. So that's that. We're just going to use our marker, lightly transfer our line, pull our template, and we'll be done. Here's a little section, I don't know if you can actually see it. When I was putting my tape down, I couldn't get the tape in this kind of contour, but I know from doing the other side that it actually rounds. So all I'm doing is kind of, just gonna eyeball it. And there you go. Okay, so I went ahead and I cut out my foam. And I just wanted to point a few things out real quick. Sorry in advance, number one, if you hear jets overhead. We live near an Air Force base and it can get a little loud at times. So, if the audio picks it up, I apologize. So the foam here, when I laid out my template, there was two spots that I wanted to leave a little extra material. This edge right here, I wanted to leave a little bit of extra foam on, and this edge back here, I wanted to leave a little bit, just based on the way the template was fitting. So now I haven't fit this yet, just because I want it, to be, real as to what you would experience or what I'm experiencing now. So we'll just fit it in, and we'll see how it looks. So right here in this back corner, I'm really happy with how tight it is. I had a big gap before, and that little bit of material that I left in worked out pretty good. Everything else right here is fitting nice and tight. When I start getting up until this area right here, you can see it's got too much. So I can go basically make a mark now and say roughly from this point forward needs to be trimmed a little bit. I'll also trim the corner off back in this area, kind of like here, so that it tucks down in there nice and neat. So yeah, so that's really not that bad, you know, for a first fit. And again, talking about symmetry, that was one template that was made on one side that I was able to transfer to this side. And, you know, you're talking the markers width difference between side to side and how this foam fit in this area. Right here, you're talking a 1/16 of an inch difference from side to side. And again, that could have been just how much fiberglass was right here. So, you know, I hate to, you know, harp on the symmetry thing, but I just get all these questions, and, you know, showing you guys how I'm doing this, if you take your time and take your measurements, save your templates and do all these steps, you can see, you know, things do line up really well. This is not a lot of trimming, you know, to do for one test fit. So I'm going to trim this edge, and it's just going to be a simple trim. Then we'll come back, we'll prep the panel and get it ready to glue in, and then we'll actually glue this one in. The next step is basically going to be scuffing everything. Now, these panels have already been scuffed previously several times. You know, you get a little bit of resin or whatever that'll drip or whatever the case may be. So really, this is more of just getting things cleaned up. This isn't really taking the shine off this metal anymore. This stuff has already been, like I said, sanded down. Same with the fiberglass in here. So all I'm going to do is just scuff it really good here, just to get anything off the surface. And then I'm going to clean it. And then we'll go ahead and start, you know, gluing this thing in place. Again, I'm not going to record me wiping things down. It's just kind of stupid. So next thing we do is going to be gluing it in. I can feel on the round rod, you know, as I'm sanding, if there's something that's, you know, little mound of epoxy or a little mound of resin or whatever the case may be, I can just feel it. So all I'm going to do is just sand stuff off until everything feels smooth. You know, nothing crazy. Same with the fiberglass, you know, I'm just trying to get stuff off. It's already, you know, close enough to where I need it to be. All right, so we'll just wipe this down and then we'll glue it in. So I've already covered this once, but I'm going to cover it again since we're going to be installing it. And this is how I actually use the contact cement. So again, I use this Weldwood contact cement. I use it a little bit differently than they recommend. And I'm usually a big stickler for using products, to the letter of the law. Because when you're talking about chemicals, a lot of times, time, temperatures, all those things really matter. The only difference with this stuff, because it's a contact cement, you're supposed to let it dry and then stick it together and it bonds. The problem for me is if I do that with some of these pieces, there's no way I'd be able to get them in place. So I have to kind of put them on wet. Uh, Now everything's going to be encased in fiberglass, and this is really nothing more than a support for the fiberglass to lay on. So, again, it doesn't have to be this like bond that's going to hold, 2,500 psi or whatever. It just needs to stick in place while I put the fiberglass over it. So the first thing we're going to do is wet out these edges, all of them. And I'm going to do 2 passes basically the whole way around because I want it to be good and soaked into this foam. Um, this foam, just like with resin, it's going to grab a good bit of this and just wick it into it. But we want to have enough on the surface that we do get a bond. So I found that putting on 2 coats back to back and then basically going over and applying a coat to the round rod and fiberglass, that seems to be the best method for installing this stuff. You only have a little bit of time before it gets really tacky to the point where you can't work with it anymore. So you got to hustle when you start doing it. I mean, you got to, have it pre-cut, have it, trimmed, everything ready to go so that when you go to set this thing, you're good to go. I mean, I can honestly say I've, practicing to make pieces like this, I've ruined so many because, trying to work a piece into a corner and it just doesn't fit. And then the problem is that the foam, once it gets all that glue, it'll bunch up and then it's just ruined. So you have to start all over. So anyway, just take your time, do it right the first time. You'll just be fine. The one thing that I will say is, try not to get it on the face because if you get any on the face and it squishes together, it will not come apart and it's pretty much junk at that point. So, work the edges, be careful how you put it on. I mean, it's so tacky that, especially like right now, it's only in the 60s, I think, here in Phoenix. This stuff is so tacky, it's not like it's going to run on anything, but, you know, people being in a hurry. When I'm grabbing it, I'm not like pinching it together either. I'm just holding it. I've done that before where I've had glue on my fingers, not realize it, pinch the foam together, and it's stuck. So, making a whole nother piece of foam sucks. This stuff really stinks too. Out of all the chemicals I use in products, this one probably drives me insane the most. I hate the way this stuff smells. But to wear a respirator and do this just doesn't work. So I don't know. If you're crazy like my wife and she likes the smell of it, by all means, keep the door shut. But if you're like me, crack a window. So on my second pass, I can really see, that it's turning this yellow color. And that's really what I'm looking for. You can see on this one, it's kind of light white, yellowish, where this side right here is kind of, right here is getting a glossy look. Yep, I just done bumped the tripod. Sorry, I got Sasquatch shoulders. All right, so that's all we're looking for on the foam. You can kind of see it's starting to soak into it around the edges. You can see it kind of in there. Anyway, I'm gonna set this down, and then we'll go put the glue on the fiberglass round rod, and then we will install this. So I'm gonna try and get this all in one take, and hopefully it works out because I only get one take with this. So the first thing we're gonna do is just put our glue in. I like to start with the fiberglass side. Really get a lot on there. The reason I like to start with this side is because it kind of wants to run. So while I'm putting glue on the round rod, by the time I'm done, I should say, I can go back and grab any runs. And by that time, it gets nice and tacky and it will not run anymore. So it's kind of like, work smarter, not harder. And once you use this stuff enough, you kind of learn some ins and outs of it. Okay. Like I said, just going to grab all this stuff that's kind of running down. You can see it's kind of tacky off my brush. Just had a nice little drip here. All right, so that's pretty much it for the glue. I have my foam here, and it's pretty much set up now. This stuff's good and wet, so we're going to go ahead and install it. This is what I was saying about using it while it's wet. If that was perfectly, tacky and dry, there's no way I'd be able to slide that corner into place. So by having it, wet, I can push this corner in as far as I want it. And if I need to, I can back the whole piece out, So I'm just going to pull the foam to the edges like this. And that will pretty much straighten it out that way. Set the corners where you want them. And you have a little bit of time before it sets up. Now, right now it's starting to get tacky. You can see how the fabric starts to grab onto the round rod. And I'm just going to stretch it nice and tight, the top and the bottom. All right. So now I'm going to take my straight edge. And what I'm going to do is go to the underside of this foam, to all these edges on the back side, and I'll use this to make them straight. And it's exactly the same process I used on the other side of the car. So, having everything line up, using the same process, will be really close from side to side. And that pretty much sets it. So, you can see all the edges here are nice and tight all the way around. This corner in the back, that's a little bit of a trick to get into place because the foam kind of wants to dip. But it's nice and put into position now. I always leave these little corners here just gapped. I can fill these in or, just span over it with fiberglass. It really is insignificant. Trying to jam a little bit of, foam in here, it's just impossible. So just cutting off that little corner allows this just to slide into place, So that's pretty much the process, to put all these little pieces of foam in. At this point, we have to let it sit, and once this thing dries, we can go back in and add resin like we did on all our other panels. So that is going to basically wrap it up for this episode. This one, like I said, I was really excited to do because there's a lot of transformation going on. If you've been following along with the build, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you keep checking back because there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more to do that's going to really, start making this car something special, in my opinion. So, again, if you have questions or comments, hit me up. I love to hear it. And thanks for watching.